short video training module on how to create really powerful and professional RFPs. If you aren't familiar with an RFP is, it's basically a request for a proposal, is what RFP stands for. It's very common in the consulting industry to have a corporation identify a project, such as a software implementation project, and they have a pretty rough idea, a good idea of what it will cost. Maybe they've done it before, they've spoken with other people that have done it in different business departments or different corporations, and they put together a list of needs, and they have an idea of their budget, but maybe they're not too sure, and then they'll send it out to 7 different, 10 different, 50 different consulting firms, or post it on their website, and they'll get applications. And these applications are RFPs. Now, basically what happens is most people get an RFP at a consulting firm. They look at it, decide are we going to complete it or not. If they're going to complete it, they'll take a week to complete it. Usually a week is what I found is a standard turnaround time for if somebody's going to respond. They usually will within a week. I would definitely recommend responding within one day though, so that you can have yours come in early, possibly first. Psychologically, they've shown that people remember the first thing and the last thing they saw. So if you can be the first person to submit your RFP, then that is usually best. It's going to show you're more prepared and on top of things. Another tip is to make sure that when you're filling out your RFPs that you're not doing it from scratch each time around. Oftentimes the RFPs can be 20, 30 pages long, full of questions, and once you answer them, it could be 60 or 80 pages worth of an RFP that you're returning to them. This can take literally a full 8-hour day or 10 hours of work on your team, and then other people have to check it to make sure there's not spelling mistakes, make sure everything's updated, etc. So it can be a very intense process. The trick here is that if you work in 1 or 2 consulting lines, you'll often have to complete very similar RFPs. And even if your consulting lines are diverse, the core part of your RFP is going to be about your team's experience, your consulting firm structure, the history of your consulting firm, how many employees you have, your mission, what makes you different. All of those sections are repeated in almost every RFP. So the trick here is to have very strong written up core sections of your RFP. They can be copy pasted into new RFPs you receive, and then they'll always have to be tweaked a little bit, or the bios moved around, etc. And there'll always be some unique questions. You're not going to ever be able to copy paste a whole RFP over in most cases. So the important point is that if you have a really well diagrammed structure of how your consulting firm is different, maybe a graphic you had somebody create for your business, maybe some information from your website that looks very professional, that can all be great stuff to have within your template RFP, so that when your RFP goes in, not only can you get it back to the client or potential client faster, but it's also going to look higher quality than your competition's. The next tip here is to see if you can connect with the champion at the organization or the project leader at the organization who put out the RFP. Better yet, try to connect with corporations who are about to launch an RFP process. Some people have never had to go through that process before, or they only have once or twice, and you could have a one-pager cheat sheet or some tips on how to complete a consultant RFP process. And by giving them tips on how they should do it, you can give them tips so that they do it in the way that benefits the way you like to respond to RFPs. For example, you could give them a copy of your RFP template and say, oh, this is these are common questions often asked. They might just go, if you give them permission, and say, you can just delete my answers and use this as your RFP if you like. And what's going to happen, not only do you have the relationship in place already, but you'll be first to reply with great answers to every question, because those are exactly the questions you're prepared for. Another trick here, if you want to take it to the next level of competitiveness, if you have that inside track and you're able to coach somebody on what questions to put in an RFP, put questions in there that are kind of focused around your competitive advantage, and you know that if your competitors answer those questions fully and truthfully, that they're going to look, in not as good of a light as your firm, because your firm has over-invested in technology, or over-invested in reporting, or over-invested in your team pedigree, so you're going to come out on top, when people look at the answers for that one question. So that's just another little side tip I've seen a lot of consultants use, and they kind of get an inside track from the very beginning and beat people out just because they have that early relationship and those early discussions. Another tip is to make sure that when you're completing the RFP, you also look at what questions are not in the RFP. Oftentimes you'll have really valuable information or stories you want to convey, and it might just not have the perfect question to allow you to do that within the RFP. So what you need to do is be creative. Within the About Us section, you put in your mission or your vision. Within another area, you can put in your USP or your competitive advantage, or what makes you totally different than any other consulting firm out there. You need to work that stuff in there whether they ask for it or not, if that's the strength of your business. The other thing to remember is that if you're submitting the RFP, almost none of your competition are going to include quotes from past clients or references from past clients with the RFP, but it can make your proposal much stronger if you do. So I would suggest either weaving quotes in throughout the RFP, or on the back page have case studies of people that you've worked with, and then some quotes from them and references from them underneath those case studies. And what this will do is show people examples of how you've worked on very similar projects, and not only that you've worked on them and completed them, but that somebody at that organization is vouching for you and saying you did a great job. That alone, that last tip there, can be the difference between winning a project or a new consulting project or not. And it's important to remember that lots of times in consulting, if you come in first, you get the business. If you come in second, you get a business card, maybe a relationship. Otherwise, you might not even get a response. So many times, the little things can make a big difference. And if you use all these little tips here to improve your RFP response process, response times, and the quality of your RFPs, then I think you'll definitely see a boost in your business and a more long-term profitability for your consulting firm. So hope you enjoyed this video. This is businesstraining.com, where you can earn master's level qualifications to help you make more money.